What the heck is going on, Vortex Nation? Thank you for listening to the podcast, and thank you for commenting on the Vortex Nation YouTube channel, which brings me to the comment of the week. Now, this one comes from Mr. Nick McCrite. I hope I got that right. He says, "Great podcast. The only problem is the money you keep making me spend. Just upgraded my spotting scope to a smaller one based on Ryan's position on the subject." Whoopsie. Nick, we might have a little bit of a hidden agenda there, but I'll tell you what my official agenda is, and that's getting you one of these super sweet Vortex Nation podcast hoodies. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing one right now. Nick, we're going to reach out to you. We're going to chat via the interwebs and get you looking real nice. So without further ado, let's start the show.
But the actual function of the bullet, the expansion of the bullet is done through tooling design. And the internal cavity is what changes what's going to make it have weight retention at, say, 3,000 feet per second and still expand at 1,500 feet per second.
We shot through cherry tomatoes and had the slow, the high-speed video camera. You can see the bullet expand in a cherry tomato.
All right, what is up, everybody? Ryan to my right, Mr. Mike Painter, and Gregg Sloan across from us here at the Western Hunting Conservation Expo. Ryan, gentlemen, we are podcasting on location. Folks out in the listening, viewing land, if you're watching on YouTube, you might see or hear a little buzz in the background, and that's just a bunch of folks who are as excited about fantastic outdoor hunting-related products as we are. But we are, guys, we are so excited to have you here. Ryan, I know you are. You might even be a little starstruck.
I'm holding it back.
We were talking a little bit beforehand, but yes, on nearly every Vortex Nation podcast where we talk or mention bullets, you guys get a solid plug from my good friend Ryan over here. So big fan of your products.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Gentlemen, if you can, maybe let's introduce yourselves. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how you ended up at Barnes, and what you do there. Mike, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, no worries. So, like I said, I'm Mike with Barnes Bullets. I've been with Barnes for about 16 years now. But I'm still one of the new guys comparatively to some of the folks at Barnes. We're a lot of tenured people that really believe in the product. So it's pretty awesome stuff. I take care of sales, marketing, product management, a little bit of everything. The PR guy when somebody wants to yell or send me in photos that we like to use on our social media and all those types of things. So that's kind of what I do at Barnes a little bit. And I get the opportunity to work with Gregg Sloan, who's probably forgot more ballistics than I'll ever know. So,
yeah, I'm Gregg Sloan. I've worked there going on 17 years, so I got Mike beat. I'm still, I guess, a newer guy. Not really, but yeah. That's a good team. I started as a ballistics lab tech. I love guns. I love reloading, love ballistics, bullets, cartridge, it all. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in the gun industry. I'm a Utah local native, and, Barnes is a Utah company. And so it worked out. I've been able to grow up with the company. I run the ballistics lab in the R&D department. And so get to mess around with new product development, day-to-day production testing for both the projectiles, the bullets, as well as the ammunition. We look at, launching a new product. We go through the whole hand load, experimental runs, design verification process to put a new ammunition product on the market. So oversee all that test and validation from a day-to-day, making sure the product meets the requirements, the performance that we expect, all the way to, developing new products or load data, the whole pressure velocity testing, all that goes into, if we launch load data on the website or manual, and that falls under me as well.
So basically, Gregg's saying that he's the guy that when I bring up a new product that I want to do, he either says you're crazy or I think we can do that. So that's he's the guy that keeps me aligned.
I too have a good idea, Ferry.
Okay.
I too have a check and balance
counterpart. There we go.
So,
yeah. Well, you always need one.
Yeah. Well, it works out.
I mean, that's important. Gregg, does Mike ever bring something up and you're like, that's an insane idea, but then you take it on as like a personal challenge?
Usually I just yell at him.
that usually happens.
You just cross Mike's name off an idea by Gregg.
Yeah, and there's a group of us there that we like, we have good discussions, and everyone's got their pet things, right? Like what matters to me might not matter to them, but at the end of the day, like what does the consumer want? What does the market want? And so there's a little bit of balance there, but
very cool. I mean, you guys were, the first, monolithic projectile that I became aware of, many years ago. But if you can, maybe give us like a brief history, a rundown, when and why Barnes came to the market, and what you guys saw, and what you saw that you might be able to do, better or different, or achieve the ballistics goals that you're looking for?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'd say Barnes. We a lot of folks don't know that Barnes has actually been around since 1932. So we're one of the oldest.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're one of the oldest bullet manufacturers in the United States. It's went through a few different ownership changes, but the one that really put us on the map was Randy and Connie Brooks. They owned the company, through the 80s and 90s and up to where we sold to Remington. Randy Brooks was the inventor of the copper bullet, the X bullet. He was in Alaska, and that's where he took the very first copper prototype. It was a 375, 300 grain bullet. He used it there, and it worked well. I mean, it was amazing. And so that's where the X bullet came from. And the one that folks are remember the most was that one. Didn't have any of the grooves cut in it. From there, though, we saw there was pressure issues, copper fouling, things like that people still think happen today, but they don't. But through those different iterations, we had the blue bullet, the Smurf bullet, the XLC.
Yeah.
Gregg had come out of the office, looking like a Smurf because he was painting them all day. And so that we had to get rid of. They were really good bullets, though. I mean, people either loved them or hated them.
I still have a couple boxes, man.
Yep, exactly. So, but then we had our engineers. They really started to kind of dive in a little bit and figure out, what can we do to help reduce the copper fouling, but make them more accurate and those types of things. And that's where they started cutting the grooves. So that's why you come up with the triple shock. It had 3 grooves originally. And that the grooves gave the copper a place to flow. So when it was going through the rifling, that spent copper could go somewhere, and it didn't foul your barrel, reduce the pressure, but it also made them super accurate. From there, we had the tip triple shock where we added the polymer tips, and then the newest iterations, the LRXs. The long-range X bullet, basically it's got a more aggressive boat tail and ogive, higher BC. And Gregg's actually worked on a lot of the newest projects where we've come out with the 30 cal 208 LRX, the 30 cal 212 bore rider, super innovative, aggressive designs that's really pushing the envelope for, an all copper product.
Awesome.
Yeah. So and we can go into this now or, later on in the conversation, but, with copper, it's not as dense as lead, right? And so your length is going to go up generally per same caliber and weight. And so sometimes that fights against you with stability, conventional twist rifles. We cut those grooves into it. Like Mike said, it reduces bearing surface, but it also adds drag. If you think about, robbing energy off a projectile and the drag profile, every one of those grooves creates drag. And so it's going to lower the BC. But they're necessary because of, like we said, it helps with reducing fouling, it helps remove bearing surface, it helps with accuracy. And so the LRX, we've gone to more streamlined ogives, longer boat tails, different tip designs. These are also controlled expansion bullets. And so with the LRX, the other piece of it is we can move that function window around through design and tooling of the cavity. And so we've actually lowered those windows, so you're getting bigger expanded diameters at lower velocities for extended range hunting. So
Gotcha. And I mean, it seems like, that bullet for, a copper projectile is achieving what a lot of folks are looking for these days, which maybe wasn't, we've talked about this before, but people weren't thinking about that, maybe 10, even 15, years ago, where it's like, ballistics calculators. We have ballistics calculators. We have, insane rangefinder, so people are extending their effective range. And you guys are coming out with a copper projectile to, I'd say a modern copper projectile to accommodate those needs, and some of those lower impact velocities that you might get at distance. So it's really cool to see how you guys have done that.
Yeah, it's really neat. Our ballistics lab, we do push them. The R&D guys, we push them a lot, and we push the envelope. Say, what is the heaviest and highest BC we can get out of a 30 cal and still stabilize in normal twist rate. And the lab's done that. Our new 208 is pushing the envelope. Guys with a 300 PRC, normal hunting distance and even past normal hunting distances, they have good terminal performance. It's still going to be very favorable. If it hits a big giant bull in a shoulder, it's going to punch through both shoulders still. It's still going to do everything that a copper bullet, the normal TTSXs would do as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. You've got high weight retention, deep penetration, but you've also got that expansion, at lower velocity and big expanded diameter, even, kind of mid-range shots. With obviously the higher BC, so you're retaining that velocity and energy, so, you're obviously impacting at a higher velocity to begin with downrange, and then with the fact that controlled expansion has moved down, that function window's been shifted, we're getting bigger diameters. The 208, for example, that one, if you, and I hate to even bring this up, but you pull the ethics out of it, right? You can't do that in long-range hunting. But just from a pure, theoretical perspective of where does the bullet function, that has to be considered. And I think that's one thing that people don't in long-range hunting. with what the optics, you guys, what they're capable of with turrets and reticles and, like you brought up rangefinders, you have all this
Tools
and all this, this whole system has to work together, but we also have to consider what is my retained velocity, what is my retained energy, but what projectile am I using? What is it doing? What is it designed to do? Whether it's a result of just the impact velocity and the material used, to upset or create mushroom or hold together or shed a jacket. You look at traditional cup and core bullets or perhaps bonded bullets, they're all going to react differently. But one thing with the copper bullet, the Barnes LRX, and the whole line is they're consistent. That's one of the biggest difference we see. They're going to expand bigger at higher velocity. Obviously, as velocity slows down, expansion is going to be less, but they are consistent. If I go shoot 10 bullets in the water tank at 1,800 feet per second, all 10 look the same. If I go shoot 10 cup and core bullets in the water tank at 1,800 feet per second, I can get everything from complete jacket core separation to zero expansion at all. And this happens quite often when we do, comparisons.
Yep. And that's been my experience with them as somebody who's hunted with Barnes almost exclusively for, I'd say, like 15 years. And I've lost track of how many critters that I've killed with them. And then friends of mine or family members of mine that I load for or make recommendations for, it's always the same story. Like, so long as you're aware of that envelope of function that you'd mentioned before, the expectation is met by the projectile. And that's exactly why it's always blue tips in my magazine, like every time. And because of the consistency is just bananas. And something that Mark and I have talked about a lot on our podcast and that I talk about with customers often when they reach out and say, hey, I'm doing hunt X, Y, or Z with system A, B, or C. What ammunition, either factory loaded or what bullet hand loaded, should I shoot? Something that I'm seeing us as a consumer base and an industry get a little caught up with. I'm not saying we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's something we got to be really cognizant of. It's not difficult for a consumer to go out and spend $600 on a rifle, which is a budget gun in today's day and age, spend $400 to $600 on an optic, $400 to $600 on a rangefinder, and have like a God's honest 1,000 to 1,200 yard capable solution. That doesn't mean that is something that you take into the field and hunt with. And a lot of ammunition manufacturers and projectile manufacturers have met those demands because of the functionality of these systems, and they've produced phenomenal ammunition that does something very well, but in a very specific spot, and it's going to give up something somewhere else. And something I like to remind folks of is if you really like 80-20, the ranges and distances that you're going to encounter game in the field. I can remember when I first started hunting the West in 2007, I was positive that I was going to be inundated with 700, 800, 900 yard shots. Like, I just thought that's how it worked. So the first thing I did is I had a 300 Weatherby built. And you know what it was? It was Randy Brooks's giant sheep that he killed in Siberia, and he used the 300 Weatherby. And I remember getting that Barnes manual and seeing it there, and I'm going, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
I killed my first pronghorn at like 87 yards with it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's more to it. But I need a bullet personally that's going to function. I don't want to shed a jacket. I don't want a core jacket separation. I don't want a delamination at 87 yards. And I also need it to function at 500 or 600, which is about the maximum window that I'll comfortably operate at. And for me, the bullet that has done that the most consistently, reliably, and then giving me the most confidence is unquestionably the TTSX and the LRX. And I just think you guys have nailed it, and I just love them. Every time I work up a load for them, it's the same story every time. I'm near the top end of the factory load data. That bullet's obturating well. It's doing everything it's supposed to, and I always get phenomenal groups. I always get phenomenal SDs. Actually, your factory ammo has dethroned a lot of my hand loading stuff as of the past probably 5 or 6 years. The factory Vortex LRX stuff. Just phenomenal. Mark took that on a bear hunt. He took my 6.5 Creedmoor, was that last year?
Yep.
And we were shooting the head box on an IPSC at 600 yards with 127 LRX stuff, and just with boring regularity. And SDs single digit. I'm like, I'm not going to load that because it's that good, and so my hat is off to you guys for truly making just unbelievable products.
Well, I know that we appreciate that. And, I know that a lot of folks, sometimes they'll come through our factory and think we're crazy because of the amount of testing that we do. We do testing probably, every 5,000 rounds,
Yep.
we're testing bullets off the press to ensure that they're, high end, low end, accuracy, all those things are being met. It is extra work on the front side, but it also means it's a better experience for the consumer. And we have less warranty complaints. We have less, anything like that. It works out really, really well for us. Taking that extra time, but it's also just like we kind of talked about before. The folks that are at Barnes are all Utah folks.
Yeah.
They all hunt, they all shoot, they all do those things, and so they're not just building the product, but they believe in the product. They're consumers, and that's the secret sauce. And that's what's made us successful for the last 30 years of building these projectiles, for sure.
Yeah, there's a big, like I said, there's a lot of passion. The guys out on the presses, they're end users. The guys loading the ammo. The guys in the office. The guys managing the teams. They're good majority. They're hunters. They're diehard shooters. They're gun guys. They're ammo guys. So I think it definitely makes a difference on that side too. But kind of back to that, that 208 specifically, and I guess let me start with this. We get asked a lot, TSX, TTSX, LRX, like what's the difference? Why do I pick one over the other? My simple answer, and there never is, right? Because across the board, there's always those one-offs. There's those unique scenarios, and this optimized bullet for this given cartridge, 300 Blackout, for example, 350 Legend, 450 Bushmaster, where we've purpose-built these, could be TSX or TTSX for, that given function window. But really the simple version I like to give is TSX is kind of that 100% weight retention, typical Barnes, probably 100 to 300 yards, think big game, Western big game, Africa.
Yep.
Alaska, that's your TSX generally. And like I said, there's always the exception, but that's kind of general. TTSX, that's kind of more that maybe 300 to 500 yards, as long and as well up close. You brought up, you're going to shoot your antelope at 87 yards, or it could be 500 yards. You don't know. You got to be very ready for either one, or your bull elk. If it's quartering away at 50 yards and I'm shooting a 300 Weatherby, I definitely don't want a projectile that's just going to come apart on it and not even reach the vitals, and so. But I also want to be ready to go when it's 600 yards across the canyon and have confidence in it. And that's where the LRX came into play. So we do have to shift it down. So you can get less weight retention up close, but it's still unlike any other bullet.
Right.
An LRX that sheds petals at 50 yards is still 80% weight retention. It still has a solid copper shank driving forward. And in order to shed those petals, it doesn't just hit and come apart. It actually is expanding as it's moving forward. It's doing its job as those petals are coming off. You're creating the big temporary cavity, and you're getting that permanent cavity, in that wound channel. And so it's unlike any other bullet.
Yes.
But back to the 208, that one, because the BC is so extreme and the window is there, and I kind of started with, I'll come back to, is the ethical piece, pull it out of it. Theoretically, that bullet performs at distances I don't even want to say. It's distances I would never shoot, but the bullet can do it. And so that means when I do take a shot on a bull at 500, 600, 700 yards, I have complete confidence in it.
For sure.
The elk's changing his schedule.
Yeah. Right. and you hit a really good point there. Something I failed to mention earlier. Like, so we're all hunters at the table. How often do you have the perfect broadside shot in a windless environment?
Very rare.
It's so infrequent, right? That you have 100% broadside, and you can tuck it right behind the heart or right behind the shoulder and hit the heart. I mean, this is a shot that, like you said, removing ethics. If you had a full metal jacket, would be a terminal solution, right? It doesn't happen that frequently. I mean, Mark and I both, in the past several years, every time we get done with a hunt, we talk about shot angle, we talk about projectile. What did it do? How did it do it? Did we do a necropsy? When we do a necropsy, what do we see on the inside? And actually, that's become more of a point of fascination for me than anything, is like trying to solve the question of how do bullets kill? Because there is kind of a big looming question mark there still. But because I'm not always presented with this perfect broadside shot opportunity from a good position with a windless environment, or at least a wind that I can try to evaluate and control the best that I can, I need a bullet that's going to function at that quartering away shot or that frontal, or and there's one, like I said, there's one that every time I look at it and be like, I can punch my tag, so long as I have the conditions to take the shot and the position to take the shot from. If this is my shot angle and this may be my singular opportunity in the field, I can do it. And that's exactly why I picked those bullets.
Well, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to what you guys were talking about before, like that consistency in performance. Like, regardless of shot angle, regardless of circumstance, essentially what that bullet, hits on its way passing through the animal, it's going to essentially do the same thing. And I guess, anecdotally, I was really amazed by this. I shot a blacktail, sitka blacktail buck quartering away with a 270 with one of your bullets, and it was quartering harder than I thought. I was shooting offhand. I remember thinking, I'm like, I was kind of like tucked right behind the shoulder. I'm like, I don't want to shoot him in the shoulders, and I thought I was going to hit him, like more like in the ribs, maybe break the offside shoulder or whatever. And I guess this goes to our point of they're not always broadside, and things don't always work out exactly how you intended.
Yep.
So unfortunately, by trying to save the fronts, I punched it through his onside rear ham, like right in the socket, and probably 80 yards max, close shot in the timber. I found that bullet under the hide after breaking the offside shoulder. So it hit in the hip, broke the offside shoulder, and it looked like the bullet that's in, that you have there, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, unbelievable. And then the sad part is, I was like, I should save this thing. And I put it on wherever I had it, I'd set it on the floor mat of my pickup. And then I was,
as one does.
That's where you keep things you want to hold on to.
That's right.
And I was vacuuming up my truck at the gas station, which is a very high-powered vacuum, and I heard it rattle through the tube. And I'm like, boy, I'm not getting that back.
Yeah.
So I don't have. I wish I had it here to show you guys.
I think there is on a lot of those like a little tray you can pull out in the event that you suck up some pocket change, and it like lands on that tray.
I probably should have. asked.
I
the
want to
attendee.
think that the attendant opened that up and like also could identify with that. Like, I know what happened here.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've only recovered in however many head of critters that I've killed or been a part of killed with Barnes bullets. I've recovered one, and it was a bedded mule deer. I want to say it was around 145 to 148 yards. It was at the last 6 minutes of legal light right before a gigantic storm came in and absolutely kicked us out. And I was like, well, this is kind of a crappy shot. Because he's frontal bedded. I maybe a slight quarter off, and so I put it right at the junction of his neck and what would be his shoulder girdle or assembly, and so I broke what would be his clavicle and 3 ribs. The bullet then traversed 7 vertebrae, and it went through the spinal column itself, like where the spinal cord runs, and I recovered the bullet just forward of his hips. And so as I'm like taking this animal apart, I'm looking at the vertebral discs, and they're discolored from trauma. And then one is simply not. And I go, well, and I'm sitting there with my hunting partner by headlamp, and I excise one of those vertebrae, and I pull it out, and it is literally stuck in there, and I popped it into my hand. And this is back when the TTSXs still had X on the back.
X on the bottom? Yeah.
I flip it over, and there it is. And it's like, well, damn, that's cool. And, I put it in my pocket. I got back. I weighed the bullet. It's 129 grains. And that was a 308 with a 130 TTSX, where you talk about like optimization of projectile and caliber. I think that is my favorite big game cartridge and loading.
Yeah.
And one of the most versatile. And for folks listening to this, they're like, wait a minute, you're shooting a 130 grain projectile out of a 30 caliber rifle? Yes. 3150 out of the muzzle of my Kimber. It tracks like my Creedmoor to 300. And then it gives up hardly anything past that. And I'm only going to use that rifle. It's very difficult to shoot because it's so light, to maybe about 500. And that's about my terminal window. And I know exactly what I'm getting out of that gun every time. And when it hits that velocity, especially 200 and in, when I've got high retained impact velocity, oh, God, is that just horrific.
You brought up a good point when you said optimized, for that. And that's one thing that I think we've done really well, too. Not only is it, okay, I've got a super magnum and I want a bolt that's going to hold together at super high velocity or downrange, but it's also those lower velocity cartridges. We look at the 308 with the 130, 7M08 with the 120 TTSX, or even a 145 LRX, where that function window's been dropped down. Maybe I'm not going to shoot 600-700 yards, but at 300-500 yards, that 145 LRX out of 708, it's awesome. It's perfect. Even to the extreme examples of like the 300 blackout with the 110 TAC TX.
Yep.
That bullet, we can move that function window specific and optimized for that cartridge. Here's a cartridge that supersonic 110 is, 2150, feet per second of the muzzle. It's not fast. It's not a screamer. But this bullet has, double diameter expansion, high weight retention up close, from 10 feet. I've shot gel at 300 yards out of 9-inch 300 blackouts and gotten dang near double diameter expansion and 20 inches of penetration. That's out of a 9-inch surrender blackout. I mean, and the wound cavity is huge. I would
at what distance?
Not at 300 yards out of a 9-inch surrender blackout. You know, I've shot hogs with that thing down in Texas. I mean, I killed a pronghorn antelope with the 300 blackout in Wyoming last year. Like, not my first choice. I had my 6.5 284 Norma.
Things got Western.
No,
it was a very tactical antelope situation.
It was. No, but you know how it goes. Like, it's Wyoming. It's antelope. It's open country. I'm a 6.5 guy, but I won't get into it too much. I don't want to make him mad. But
offend anyone.
We won't talk about the Creedmoor. So, like, 6.5 284, 6.5 by 47 Lapua. I'm like a purist. I'm not going the Creedmoor route. But anyways, I had my 284 Norma. I had a bullet that Mike won't let me talk about. Some cool stuff, hopefully coming out. I'm doing some field testing. You know, I wanted the pronghorn at 6, 7, 8, 900 yards. That was my goal. It didn't happen. It just didn't work out. The buck I wanted to kill, you know, at the end of the day, I still want a good antelope. I still want, you know, the one I'm happy with. It's at 125 yards. Thick sagebrush, tall sagebrush, offhand shots. You know, they're rutting, they're chasing does. These things are running around, trying to swing around my big long-barreled, big scope 6.5 284. It's not working. So my truck gun, I've got a little just bolt action 300 blackout, suppressed. You know, I popped this thing frontal at 125 yards right in its chest. Didn't hesitate. And an antelope, I'm not going to say it's hard to kill. It's an antelope. It's a pronghorn. They're thin-skinned. I get that. But that 110 penetrated clear through. I recovered that bullet. You made me reminded of you thinking that. That's one of the only ones I've recovered in one of the back hindquarters. You know, perfectly expanded. Did its job. The antelope went down, you know, but I didn't hesitate once. And that's a good example. We've optimized those bullets for that cartridge, specifically for its velocity range, so we get optimum performance.
That's super cool. That's really neat.
And that's why you see the different weights, too. I mean, we have some random weights for the different cartridges.
It's not haphazard. It's thought through.
Yeah, it's thought through. Yeah, I mean, we have the Doppler radar we do. You know, we have the ballistics lab doing things. We match up where the velocity for that cartridge and I mean, it's quite a process. We're not just throwing out numbers because they sound good or it's Gregg's kids' birth dates or something like that. But, yeah, there's definitely thought that goes into it.
Just to fly in the face of conventional, you know, and intelligent thought, I used to load the 130 TTSX and 300 Weatherby, 3650. And when it was the proverbial laser beam, I mean, because it's moving so fast. And when it hit, nothing, that was like probably my most lethal delivery package that I had. It was an uncontrollable rifle, though, and ultimately, like, I grew to hate it. And as you can imagine, moving anything down a barrel at 3,650 feet per second is going to lead to an early demise, which it did. I'm shocked. I rebarreled it, still 300 Weatherby, still the same contour. I have shot that gun less than 200 times since I've rebarreled it. We used to use it for recoil testing, and then I just don't shoot that anymore. But I've got a whole bunch of 175 LRXs loaded up, so I'll use it for that.
Well, and I think that speaks to just the time we live in today with modern projectiles, with these modern tools that we have at our disposal. You don't have to rely on sheer velocity to deliver that bullet at distance. You know, we can use a laser and some math and a good cartridge, an efficient cartridge with a quality projectile, and get a lot done. And you know, I mean, I've shot a variety of styles of bullets throughout my hunting life, and a lot of them have worked and worked handily. But you know, I mean, I keep kind of harping on this same thing. The consistency in performance, but also the consistency in production that you guys are doing, that I think is elevated, you know, translates to that consistent performance in the field. And so it's just really cool stuff. Gregg, you were talking about some of the different, I guess, you know, performance characteristics of the TSX and the TTSX. What are the physical differences between those bullets?
Yeah, that's a good question. So they're all the solid copper, you know, monolithic solid copper. So it's actually done through tooling. So material-wise, they're basically the same. It's design changes, geometry, different ogis, different boat tails, different angles, different lengths. It's different me-plat sizes, different tip sizes, different grooves, different groove diameters, different number of grooves. That all gets factored in and tested into the design. But the actual function of the bullet, you know, the expansion of the bullet is done through tooling design. And the internal cavity is what changes What's going to make it have weight retention at, say, 3,000 feet per second and still expand at 1,500 feet per second.
Okay, gotcha.
That's the difference is in the design and tooling of the actual internal cavity. And that's where the science comes in, and that's where it gets a little bit even artsy. I mean, we've got an engineer at Barnes that's been there 25 years, and he's got it figured out. He knows how to design those punches. He knows what goes into it, and it's not easy. It's not an easy, to be fair, and we build lead core bullets too, right? I mean, Barnes is not just a copper bullet maker. We build target bullets, we build match burners, varmint bullets.
Caliber originals.
Heavy for caliber originals. We got stuff in the Pioneer line with our 180 grain 357, 190 grain 3030, 400 grain 4570. So we're going to go with what material makes sense for the application.
Yep. Sure.
But going back to the lead core, in reality, a lot of the way a lead core bullet functions for just a standard cup and core is basically a result of its material and design at a given velocity, right? Where these expanding controlled expansion monolithic bullets, there's more that goes into the actual internal cavity through tooling that's going to affect how that performs, right? They open up into the 4 petals, or like our muzzleloader bullets, our pistol bullets, it's actually 6 petal design. That's all affected through internal cavity tooling.
Okay, super interesting. So they're just different tooling, different design, different engineering,
Right?
Doing different things the same way, though.
To the same result.
Yeah.
Fully expanded.
Yeah, we set a function window, right? So every bullet has a function criteria. We look at the application, and some are very specific purpose built. We could build a bullet like some of our new stuff that's coming out, or even some of the past stuff. Look at I brought up that 208. We looked at the 300 PRC. It doesn't mean it's the only thing. I mean, I shoot the 208 out of a 1 1/8 twist 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
Just because. But we looked at the 300 PRC. We built that 208 around that cartridge. It's specific for that cartridge. We optimize it for that. Versus, a 168 TTSX that we've had forever, that might be fired in a 308, 300 Weatherby, 30-06, 300 Win Mag. It goes across the board what guys are going to hand load that into. So sometimes we have to kind of look at a broad selection. Sometimes it's very specific, but we're going to look at the application. Okay, what is the intended muzzle velocity? Kind of what's the application for range? What's the expectation on weight retention? And we're going to set that function window to meet that criteria. There's no perfect magic bullet that's going to expand at 1,200 feet per second and still have 100% weight retention at 4,000 feet per second. There's some crazy extremes. You just can't. Generally we're going to have, say, 1,000, 1,200 feet per second to work with. We're going to be able to move it up and down. And so that's what starts to drive us in engineering to say, okay, these are the kind of tooling designs we're going to need to be able to build that internal cavity to work at that velocity. Obviously the internal cavity and tooling of a 110 300 blackout that starts out at 2150 versus a standard 110 TTSX that I could load in my 30-06 at 3500, they're going to be completely different.
Yeah. And would then see different results downrange.
Right. Yeah. So if I go shoot the blackout bullet at 3,000 feet per second, I'm going to completely blow petals. But at the end of the day, it's still a solid copper shank.
Yep.
It's still not like a cup and core bullet. You're not just fragmenting the jacket into a bunch of pieces. The lead core is not just smearing out or completely blowing apart at that velocity.
It's still 80% weight retention.
At the end of the day, it's most of these bullets, even if you blow petals, it's depending on the length of the bullet, right? What's left there. It's obviously going to be, some sort of form of caliber and weight and length for the material. But yeah, if you shed petals on basically pretty much any Barnes bullet, you're in that 70 to 85% weight retention.
Yep. The nice big flat front that's moving meat and bone like crazy. Yeah, I've never personally seen it happen, but I think maybe because I was probably doing a better job of matching, except for that 130 out of the 300 Weatherby. That's a guaranteed mismatch. But trying to match and optimize that cartridge, the projectile, a velocity window, and then my expectations, right? But yeah, just super marvelous designs. And something I think is cool is you guys have been doing copper projectiles for 3 decades. I'm seeing other folks come to the table with copper and copper alloy projectiles, and it's fun for me to sit back as like a fanboy of Barnes, and I'll say that like wholeheartedly, and see other folks coming to the table with designs that are meaningful and have purpose, and see the conversation come back to Barnes, the originator of this copper bullet, right? And like, you guys have been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of rounds, probably more than that, in testing in not just your water tanks, but on gels on the flat range and then on game across the world. And it's like, the data's there. And it's cool to see copper coming, I'm going to say, into vogue for whatever reason. And people, talk about copper from an environmental perspective. And I'm going to be very straightforward and say that's not why I chose copper. I chose copper for terminal performance.
Right.
And then now people also realizing these things kill a very different way. Like the end result is a dead critter, but they are. I tell Mark it's like pushing a Ninja Magic Bullet blender through a thing when you shoot it.
That's really what it is.
And seeing folks, customers, consumers, understanding now that there's a real benefit to shooting a projectile of this design, so long as you're keeping it within those defined windows of operation. This isn't a bullet that I'm going to recommend somebody goes and shoots a PRS match with. That's what you have match burners for.
Right.
But if you're a big game hunter and you're a multi-species, multi-state big game hunter, and you have one gun, there's a good chance, I'd say there's a 99.999% chance that Barnes has a bullet that's going to pull it off. I even have banded solids in 6mm left. So, if I ever decide
it's a collector
to
item.
go do some dangerous game hunting with my 243, I'm covered there with a solid. But it's awesome.
Well, I mean, just having confidence in a bullet that, essentially any shot angle that you encounter, where you can, put that animal down, and knowing the bullet's going to do what you need it to do is, to me, it broadens your odds, or it increases your odds of coming home successful on that hunt. If you have a hard quartering shot on an elk, either quartering to or away, you can take that shot with confidence. Yeah. So that's a big, and we were talking about that earlier. Like, I can count on rarely is an animal just exactly broadside.
It just doesn't. Yeah, and we need to be honest and real with ourselves as hunters and shooters that, like, it's not always going to work out perfect, right? And for situations like that, we either pass on the shot as ethical people, or you tool up and equip yourself with the means to take the shot, but deliver terminal payload.
Whatever bullet I'm using, if I'm with somebody, like, and I don't want to have to abide by, like, wait for him to turn. I don't want to wait for him to turn.
Yeah.
I just want to kill it now because I have the shot.
Yeah. And sometimes that wait for him to turn just doesn't happen. Like that bedded mule deer. It wasn't even a far shot. It was my opportunity for the hunt, though. And if I wouldn't have taken him, I would not have come out heavy. That was it. I had him bedded at 140 and change, and that was it. And frontal. I had a target of opportunity about the cross-section of a loaf of bread. And I exploited it, and it worked out.
That's right.
Famously.
Well, and you never know when buck fever is going to set in either.
For me,
even
it's
the most
every
experienced.
time.
Yeah.
It's every time.
If you don't have buck fever, you should hang them up. So that's.
Just to speak a little bit more about versatility too. So I've switched from large Magnum cartridges on the whole to smaller format cartridges. So I shoot a lot of 308, 243, 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm kicking around the idea of a 7 saw. Something like that. And then I'll keep big stuff on hand for when big stuff is required, but very rarely, and I actually attribute this to the bullet technology that you guys have brought to the market, I don't need to do that. I'm less concerned with a laser flat trajectory, to Mark's point, because I now have the tools, whether it's a ballistics calculator or a rangefinder, that are going to help me do the math part. We have optics these days on the consumer market that are extremely adept. You can't buy a bad rifle scope from a major optics manufacturer. We have reticle information that's brilliant, turrets that are extremely tactile and accurate. All I need now is a delivery mechanism in the form of a bullet that's going to function. And because of that, because I shoot your bullets, I found that delivery mechanism is so reliable that I can step away from big recoil. And in stepping away from big recoil, I can be more confident in my shots. I can shoot more frequently on the practice range. And Mark and I do this every single year. He or I are getting tooled up for a hunt, trying something new or whatever, and we go subjugate ourselves to tremendous recoil, and we talk about how much it sucks. And then pivoting to, like, you took my 6.5 on that bear hunt. I mean, you were hammering with that gun to an honest 600 yards with boring regularity. And
that made me want to, that was the impetus for me, building one of my own of similar form factor.
And then we ask ourselves, is this like the best of both worlds? We don't have recoil. We have reliable equipment. And like everything stacks in our favor to be better shooters, more effective shooters, and thusly more ethical shooters. But so long as we understand those windows of operation, which I think we can't stress it off.
You got to be operating within that threshold of functionality. But and I'm still a big fan of 300s and 300 short megs to be more specific. But man, it sure affords you a lot of performance without depending on the hunt, what you're chasing. Without subjugating yourself, like you said, to that recoil.
And go ahead.
No, please go. I feel like we're kind of blubbering. And another reason I like it is
we like that.
No, I'd rather hear you. I want to hear you guys talk.
No, I just bring up you
too.
talked about stepping down in cartridge and going a little bit smaller, and that just made me think of the bullet weight as well. You brought up your 6.5 127. A lot of guys think 6.5. I'm hunting. I need a 140 grain.
Yep.
We get asked quite often, why don't you build a 140 grain? Why can't I have a 140 grain in my 6.5 Creedmoor? And Mike mentioned this earlier, but we talked about copper's not as dense as lead, right? And so to get that weight, you're longer. And even with a 1-in-8 twist and a 6.5 Creedmoor, we have limitations on stability. And with a long, sleek ogive and long boat tail and a tip, that 127 is as heavy as we can go and still properly stabilize in all conditions in a 1-in-8 twist. So that's why it's a 127 grain. That's why it's not a 135 or 140 grain, LRX.
Yep.
But because of the solid copper design and construction and high weight retention and deep penetration, they're acting bigger than they are.
Yes.
You can do things with a 127 and a 6.5 Creedmoor you would never do with a 120 grain lead core and a 6.5, all the way to killing elk. Do I think a 6.5 Creedmoor is a great elk cartridge? No. But can it do it? Certainly. But make sure you have the right bullet to do it, and your ranges are reasonable, and shot placement, all those other things obviously come into play. But good example of, we get it all the time, and you get to 30 cal, and your normal weights, 168s, 180s, those kind of things. But especially in the 6.5s, and some of those smaller calibers is, I've got to have a heavier, I got a heavier. No, you don't. Go try it. Go shoot the 127.
And you're also driving that faster,
right?
too.
It's a benefit. It's flatter shooting. It's higher velocity. It's got a good BC. You're pushing, high fours, and so it's this 127 is, it's really is a good fit for that cartridge and that case capacity and the launch velocity that can push that bullet.
I mean, different bullets are performing differently depending on their construction. We've talked a lot about that, but with that copper construction, regarding grain weight, you're able to do more with less.
Yeah, no, for sure. Generally, a good rule of thumb, we'd always tell folks is that if you're used to shooting, 180 grain jacketed lead core style projectile, you could drop down a weight class, shoot a 168, and you'll get similar type of performance because it's a monolithic bullet. It's still retaining all of its weight. You're not getting the cup and core separation.
So back on that mule deer that I recovered the singular bullet from, I figure that's 38 inches of penetration, and not through just gel. Gels are, Mark and I shoot a fair amount of gel. You guys shoot a ton of it. You guys shoot water as well. A super consistent medium to fire into is a great thing, but a critter has varying tissue densities every step of the way.
Yep.
Hair is one thing, green hide is another thing, adipose tissue, connective tissue, bone, muscle, and then soft tissue like organs on the inside. That bullet, it's imagine pumping your brakes at an irregular cadence and trying to maintain some sort of stability.
Yeah.
Gel's a great thing, but critters don't lie. And 36 to 38 inches of penetration through a considerable amount of bone, hide, fat, muscle tissue, ligament, connective tissue, etc. It's holy smokes. And that is about, when you look at 130 grain Barnes TTSX for a 30 caliber projectile, it looks like a 150, right? From the size.
Yep.
Yeah. But the weight, and people still do, even guys that I hunt with on the regular, look at me quite quizzically. They're like, man, that's light. and I tell them the same thing you guys just said. It kicks a weight class up, and I think it kicks a little bit more than weight class up. And something I often remind folks is imagine, what's a better scenario? And there's no right or wrong answer to this. You have a projectile that impacts target at 165 grains. If you're lucky and it leaves target, what does it leave the target at? 50% of that weight? 60% of that weight in a conventional cup and core design? Or is it better to have a projectile that impacts a target at, I'm just going to say 130 grains, and leaves that target, if you're lucky enough, at 130 grains? Like, what is a better play? For me, my experience, a hole in and a hole out and a tremendous amount of devastation of structure on the way through, that is the best terminal performance that I personally observed, right?
Do you guys see on game, because of the construction of the bullet, more? I guess we keep talking about which I think is incredibly important, like hard quartering shots or things like that. But do you see more consistent straight line tracking? Like if I've got a hard quartering shot, maybe it's quartering away. Maybe it's an animal that was feeding all night. Maybe I'm trying to shoot an elk that was feeding all night, and he's just slipping back in the timber, and I got a hard quartering shot, and I'm going to put it mid ribs. Maybe I am punching it through the paunch a little bit to get where I want that bullet to go. Do you guys? But I want, I'm picturing when I take that shot, that straight line. I'm picturing, trying to break or punch through that offside shoulder. Do you guys see more consistent straight line tracking that you can rely on versus maybe a traditional cup and core or something like that? Which actually maybe something, depending on the range or the conditions, maybe I might have to wait for a different shot angle.
Yeah, and physics obviously still come into play. Sectional density of a bullet's going to affect penetration.
Okay.
But because of the mass and the retained mass, with that high weight retention and the solid copper, like I said, even if you shed petals, we've already brought this up, you're still left with this straight, 80% shank. It's still going to penetrate through. When that cup and core bullet breaks up, jacket's pulling off, there's nothing left there, Or the other end of it, say it does hold together good, but it just mushrooms out like a flat pancake, it's putting on the brakes so fast, we're limiting that penetration as well. Mm-hmm. But we do see straight line penetration. High weight retention is going to help that too. The difference of a TSX, I'll use example, say a 308 180 grain TSX. That thing in gel will penetrate 40 plus inches.
We found that out.
Yeah. Versus, say, if I go launch a 175 LRX at same velocity, I might be more apt to lose pedals. Sure. Super high impact velocity. You're not going to get as much penetration, and maybe you'll start to veer off a little bit. But deflection might be, I'd say, less than 2 or 3 inches, left or right or up or down or whatever it's going.
I just know I always think back to the first buck that I ever shot. It was a spike blacktail, probably, 60, 80 yards, slightly quartering away. Shot him behind the shoulder, fairly tight behind the shoulder. And when we recovered the deer, it'd run off. It bled really well the whole way. But, and I guess you could say, well, it died, didn't it? It bled, didn't it? Yes. But it died laying on its opposite side. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I hit this thing in the guts. And it was just a really bizarre thing to me to have that bullet enter here, but exit behind,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It took a left.
Yep.
It was the magic bullet.
That happens.
Anyway, that's kind of what I guess my question there was, because what I'm picturing is something different than what happened. And like I said, end result, okay, but
Well, and there's different areas too. Different scenarios. We have folks that'll call sometimes, and they'll receive bullets they'll have bullets that maybe didn't open like it should have, or things like that. And we'll look at it and say, "Oh, you were in brush." Well, how do you know that? Well, the bullet's bent. You impacted, and things like that can definitely throw a bullet off. Doesn't matter what projectile you're using.
Sure.
You're in heavy timber or things like that. It's going to throw off the trajectory of that bullet, and then when it impacts, it's going to bend. It's not going to disrupt.
Right. Yeah, you've closed off that cavity where fluid. They're hydraulic-driven cavities, right?
Okay.
So as the bullet enters, soft tissue, it all has fluid, and so that fluid enters the cavity. It's what creates that mushroom. It's what creates the petals to peel back.
And that's a really interesting thing to talk about too, and something we maybe didn't touch on: the distinction between what we'll call conventional cup and core design, using just simply mechanical, like friction, to push material, versus your engineered cavities fill with that fluid and kind of deploy, and then the assistive friction to continue on opening up. Right?
Exactly. And that's where that shape and the design of the tooling is going to affect how deep that cavity is, how much it peels back, how flat it is. Is it one that expands to, is it a 270 that expands somewhere around, 0.5 inch, or is it a 270 that expands to, pushing 0.7, and how much is left, that ratio of length versus expanded diameter at that full bottomed out cavity. So there's a lot that goes into it on that end as well, from a design perspective.
From your guys' seat, are there a couple of myths, and I'm sure there are, and I'm sure we know them, that you hear folks apprehensive to jump into copper. That myth, what is it that they're sticking to, and why?
Yeah, I mean, Gregg can talk to it from the ballistics side, you know, but I mean, you know, we do hear a lot. Folks are saying that the bullet didn't open. Well, how did you know the bullet didn't open? Did you recover the bullet? No. Well, did you kill the animal? Yeah. Okay. They didn't. They claim that they didn't open because the hole is small on the opposite side. Well, our bullet's double diameter expansion, so if you were to go measure it, it's probably double diameter. So you know, it's not a 30 cal, it's 0.6 or something like that. That's a myth. That folks like Gregg, I mean, literally his team shoots thousands of rounds every day in our tank to make sure that we're opening every time, and that water is a very aggressive test. It's definitely more difficult than ballistic gelatin and anything like that, and so it's very rare that a Barnes bullet does not open in normal conditions, in normal hunting scenarios. Oftentimes there's something else that may have caused the situation where the bullet didn't open properly.
Yeah, the other thing I'd bring up is say somebody tried an X bullet from the 90s.
Yeah,
it wasn't
a big
accurate.
One. Yeah.
Try them again. Try TTSX and LRX. The other one is that it didn't expand big enough. It's too tough. It's too tough of a bullet. It just penetrates through. Not enough expansion. Not enough energy transferred to the target or to the animal. Right. We wasted energy on the hill on the other side, or however you want to say it. And that's where to a point, I guess there's some truth because of application, right? If I designed a bullet, a 7mm 175 TSX flat base, it's a super long bullet. It's not a high BC.
Super slow.
Super slow. And it's designed for highway retention. That is a 1 to 200 yard. I'm going to shoot a 175 grain for whatever reason. To be straight up honest, I don't even know why you'd shoot that bullet. Being frank, I wouldn't pick it.
If I was kudu hunting or eland hunting and I had a 7 Mauser on a vintage, that's where I'm using that bullet.
But even then, go to the 160. Yeah, it's a better bullet.
And it's it's almost a vestigial trait at that point in time, right?
But then they're going to take that as, well, I tried to shoot a mountain goat at 500 yards and it didn't expand. Yep. It wasn't designed to. You're now below the retained and impact velocity that you impacted that animal is actually below the velocity that bullet was designed to function at.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear that one quite a bit too. Is the bullet's too tough and it doesn't deploy. And again, I've kind of seen behind the curtain just shooting so many things with them or being with folks while they've used them. I've never seen a bullet deploy faster, but more importantly, deploy and then maintain integrity.
Yeah, right.
I'll say faster with an asterisk on the end of it, right? There's certainly some bullets, typically those equipped with Delrin tips and very thin jackets that are meant for explosive, and I don't mean incendiary, complete and total delamination,
right.
Like a varmint bullet.
Yep.
That's a whole different topic, but like a true hunting bullet,
which for its application is functioning properly.
I've got a set of pictures we won't show on the podcast, but it was a white-tailed deer, a mature doe. It was a Kimber 308, 3150 launch velocity, 130 TTSX. The entrance hole is, it's caliber and a half plus to nearly double, and we're talking about total penetration through any kind of medium of, if we count hair, hide and adipose tissue, perhaps 3 inches. And when it's entering the thoracic cavity, it's just under the size of a ping pong ball. And the exit is even more grotesque. What's interesting, though, is through the hide, smaller holes than you would expect, right? And so folks will say it's too tough, it won't deploy. Close. It's got to go to sleep, which is the backwards thing. And you got to get the hide off of something to see what really happened, right? It's infrequent that I ever see chunks of hide removed. Usually that's secondary fragmentation coming through and cutting that away, right?
Yep.
That's one that I hear a lot of folks hesitant on trying them.
And it could be as simply as the wrong product selection.
Sure. Yeah.
If I've shot even a TTSX, that we came out with 15 years ago, and try an LRX, of today. If that's what you're looking for is bigger, expanded diameter, lower velocity, and I'm going to probably shoot 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 yards, okay, go to the product that was designed to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and going back on the expansion thing, we did some tests, and we kind of visited a little bit earlier. We're going to start doing some more videos and putting some content out there to help educate the consumers. But it would have been 2010, 2011, something like that. We did a bullet myth busted video.
Yep.
And we shot through cherry tomatoes and had the slow, the high speed video camera. And you can see the bullet expand in a cherry tomato. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
it's doing its thing for sure. I mean, in something that thin.
Right. It doesn't have to hit an elk shoulder
Right.
to have expansion.
Yep.
Even a 180 grain 30 cal TSX will open up on a cherry tomato.
Yep. And that's that hydraulic
Right.
component there.
Because
right?
there's fluid.
Yep.
It's creating expansion.
Yep. Absolutely.
You go shoot it into gravel, it's not going to.
Right.
But no bullet's going to do that
Right.
either. So it's
right. Right.
Yeah. One thing I got to bring up for fun, because you mentioned 300 wisdom.
Yeah, how many letters do I need to write to get you guys?
at least 200.
You're going to get 100 letters, and like, curiously, they're all the same handwriting.
I shouldn't have brought it up. Man.
It's going to happen.
No. Yeah, we definitely, try to build all the 300 wisdom we can.
Yeah,
that's
most
popular.
definitely.
And it's one that just comes down to brass availability. For us to get, that's what keeps us from building more. But I bring it up with the kind of a unique one that I don't know that a lot of consumers and guys out there really fully understand. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of explain it. Is a 212 grain bore rider,
Right.
LRX. So when we built this bullet, just to be totally upfront, it was first looked at for more of a military application. 300 Norma. That's what the bullet was kind of built around. And this was in a just design and just rough.
Proof of
concept type, looking at where the application is. We, as, guys at Barnes, lab guys, Mike, a few of us.
I'm included in the team finally.
You're finally, we'll let you. He joined in on this little, we got looking at, here's a bullet that's unreal. I mean, this is a BC that's over 0.7. This bullet will expand to literally below 1,500 feet per second. So you talked about efficiency earlier. We don't have to have a super magnum. I don't have to launch this 212 at 3,300 feet per second.
Okay.
If I launch this 212 at 2,700 feet per second, 2,800 feet per second, with a BC of over 0.7 and a bullet that will reliably expand to 1,500 feet per second, with high weight retention and deep penetration, all of a sudden, what can I do with this, right?
Yep.
Everything. So
That's a pretty big operating window.
it's huge. But how do I shoot it, right? It's a long bullet. It's a bore rider. It's designed to be seated at that transition. So I have a ton of bullet forward of the case mouth. It was designed around a 300 Norma to be mag-fed out of a given platform that had 4-inch magazines. So how do I do that as a normal guy in the field with my normal hunting rifle? So we started looking at options, what we could do with it, because at the end of the day, we wanted to go use this bullet ourselves. We wanted to field test it. We wanted to be able to shoot it. So we did a couple different things. I have a modified 300 Norma to shoot from a 700 with an extended box.
Yep.
But what we mostly got looking at is 300 Wisdom.
Sure.
So here's a shorter case.
Sure.
We can
All
seat
these
this
pieces
bullet
are
out
coming
long.
together in my head right now. That's just
So all it takes is building a 300 Wisdom
Yep.
on a long action with a 1-in-8 twist, and all of a sudden I can launch a 212 bore rider. I can mag feed it because of the shorter case, even if the bullet's sticking out, and I can get 2,800 feet per second out of a 212 bore rider.
When you said 300 Wisdom, I took the top of a 300 Norma and the top of a 300 Wisdom, and I said two pieces fit. And
So we
too.
actually called it internally. It was our poor man 300 Norma.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
And I mean, we've killed, I don't know how many elk. I mean, my wife, she used it, and I mean, you could actually, with the suppressor on it and stuff, you could actually hear the bullet hit the elk. I mean, it was
wild.
It was pretty devastating.
Yeah, I took the first year we had that bullet, before it was ever launched, that bullet actually existed in a prototype form, I'd say
2 or 3
almost
years?
2 or 3 years before we launched it as an LRX. Because then it was like, well, we have this, what are we going to do with it? It's an extreme bullet. It's a unique, you throw it out there, it's like, it was one of those where it was, guys will build a gun to shoot this projectile.
Sure.
There isn't
And
a
they have.
factory, and they have. There's not a factory option available. We can't factory load it within SAMI specifications in anything. It's too long, even in a 300 PRC, to mag feed in most cases.
Yep.
But anyways.
And this is where I spin in circles again, because we just talked about how you can shoot essentially like lighter for caliber bullets and have fantastic performance. And now I'm like, oh heck yeah, I need that.
There's still benefit to doing that though, right? So like this is a very specific and fairly eclectic use case.
Sure.
And to be fair, the 212 is awesome, and not to take away from it all, but once we really got looking at it, and with the 300 PRC coming out, that's what drove us to the 208. We
Okay.
backed off a little bit. Let's make this a little more conventional so it can work in more platforms. And even though I have a 300 Norma for the 212, to be honest, I shoot my 1 8 twist 300 Win Mag with the 208 more often.
Yeah. And there's tons of guys shooting the 208s now. Guys are shooting 300 rums. And you guys know Brady Miller?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Brady shoots that 300 rum all the time with that 208. And, I mean, he hammers stuff at crazy distances. And, you know, it's been a super good projectile, super forgiving at 300 PRC. And we finally decided to launch it this year in ammunition. And so that's been one of our exciting things, too.
And the cool part about having a really adept ballistics calculator is we can model all of this ahead of time, and we can say, like, okay, there's expectation and then there's reality. Let's take into consideration, like, recoil characteristics. Let's take into consideration, like, cost of operations. A 212 bore rider is a more expensive bullet than a 175 LRX.
For sure.
And, you know, which one is going to give us more fuss and fit when we're tuning that load? It's going to work out.
Well, maybe we can
Maybe I'll do that.
Because I happen to have some of those 175 LRXs, and we are going to reload them.
We are. We suffer from an abundance of 300 Wisdom brass at work.
There you go.
So we use
Send some our direction.
Yeah, we use 300 Wisdom as a very unique recoil profile for like high volume testing. And my hat is off to the gentlemen in our test groups that have to do 2,000 round shoulder fire tests.
As much as I love that cartridge, that doesn't sound like fun to me.
They'll do 1,000 to 2,000 round lots a day out of a Kimber Mountain Ascent, an 8400. So the gun's about 6 pounds, 10 ounces. They throw a scope on it, and it's 2,000 rounds.
Yeah.
And they're firing it from the shoulder.
That's pretty intense.
It's awesome.
Yeah, we did when we launched our Vortex Safari line.
Yeah.
You know, many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Name, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, you know, we're talking 416 Rigby, 416 Red Mag, 470 Nitro, 500 Nitro, cool cartridges. But when we went through the design, load development, you know, F&C testing, function casualty, making sure the ammunition works in the actual firing platforms, we had to do all that. You know, double rifles off shoulder, point of impact tests between TSX and solid loads. So I can feel their pain a little bit.
Yeah, the ballistics lab started recruiting all the office people to come down, and they're like, "Oh, come shoot 10 rounds as fast as you can."
We really, though, like, just in all honesty, we were building 416 Rigby ammo in the last 2 weeks out on the production floor, and we do testing every day. You know, both out of the pressure velocity barrels, accuracy barrels, but then out of actual rifles. You know, we have a CZ 550. You know, put them in the magazine, fire them off shoulder. It's not that fun to shoot. It's really not. You know, we had one of the ammo operators that's like, all excited about, I want to come shoot. That's like, have at it, dude.
Yeah.
You know,
oh, great. Yeah, no, come on up here.
Yeah, that's when you guys were like, hey, you know, we're doing some team building.
That's
we're getting
right.
more people involved in the process. You know, you just got to spin it. Mike, you're in marketing.
Oh, yeah. No, they spun it to me the first time. You know, about 7 rounds in, I was done with the spin. It was.
So can we know what's new this year?
So I was going to say
I'm sorry.
the same
We'll edit
thing.
that out, Mark.
Well, no, I was excited. Off air,
Yeah.
you guys are like, hey, we got some new stuff.
Yeah.
And so now, exactly,
Yeah.
Ryan. I wasn't trying to.
I'm sorry.
Equally, I'm excited. I want to hear about the new stuff. What's
Well,
going on?
I used to say, so Vortex Long Range, that's the kind of the ones we've been talking about a little bit. We had 2 new line extensions this year that we launched at SHOT Show. 300 PRC with the 208 LRX, and then we also launched the 280 Ackley, which is fun because Gregg, like I said, he's kind of ahead of his times. He's the the monocle guy at the office, you know, shooting the different cartridges and stuff. And he got me hooked on the 280 Ackley.
Yeah.
It's been
a
5
long
or 6
time
years
ago.
ago, I think.
Probably longer than that.
Maybe.
But
And we've loved the cartridge. I mean, it's as we've gotten older, it's like, oh, you get great ballistics, 7 Rem Mag ballistics without the recoil. So it's been awesome. But we just could never justify, you know, launching the load. I mean, we couldn't do a load specific with a bullet designed specifically for the cartridge. And last year, I was visiting with Joseph Von Benedict and the outdoor rider. You guys know Joe. And he's a big 280 Ackley guy as well. Got talking with him. He's like, Mike, what would it take? And he's like, I'm like, Joe, I just got to prove that there's, you know, the market out there for this. And he's like, all right. He's like, well, we'll see what we can do. About month and a half later, I start getting letters, handwritten letters in my mailbox at the office, and probably maybe 100 letters I received from listeners to his podcast wanting, cordially requesting this 280 Ackley load. And I was like, well, that's good enough for me. And
so that's all it takes. Is
well, yeah,
that's all it takes.
100 handwritten letters. You know, it was probably the postage alone probably paid for the development. So but we did that, and it's awesome. It's a great It's a great round. We're super excited about it. And then actually probably at the NRA show, we anticipate we'll launch 2 new loads, 7 PRC and 28 Nosler.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Cool.
The 7 PRC, we haven't finalized the bullet 100%, so we're not quite ready to announce that, but it's going to be awesome.
Sure.
It'll be another cartridge-specific thing. And then
it's a new bullet, though. Unique, and it's going to be for an LRX and honestly a game changer.
Yeah, it
That's
will
exciting.
be for sure. Yeah, and then the only other thing that we really launched this year that was actually really cool was our reduced recoil line.
That's what
Neat.
I didn't know if I could say it. And I'm glad
most
you said
definitely.
it.
Yeah, and we sat down though, and Gregg and I, we talked about this. We was like, we don't want to just do use the same bullet, use a lower charge, and it's just somebody's not going to have a good experience. And so we decided that we were going to actually build bullets specifically for those lower velocities, tailor that bullet to the cartridge, to those velocities, so that people can have confidence, the consumer can have confidence that, at 200 yards, he's going to get full double diameter expansion. It's still going to work properly, But we also looked at the range. Like folks that are using a reduced recoil load, someone that's maybe timid to recoil or a youth shooter, things like that, probably shouldn't be shooting past 300 yards.
Agreed.
And so that's kind of where we tailored that. We said, okay, the function window that Gregg talked about, 0 to 300, you're amazing. It's going to be right there. It's going to work well.
Yeah, and again, another example where we've optimized that bullet specific for that. So, we have, 243 80 grain. It's not the same 80 grain. 6.5, it's a 100 grain. It's a different bullet. We've actually lowered the function window, and a lot went into load development.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy task of, hey, from these guys, it's like, hey, we want reduced recoil. You just take some powder out.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work that way. It's a whole different powder, different burn rates. A lot goes into load development, and we've spent a ton of time on the development side to make sure we have consistent velocities, safe pressures, all of our temperature testing that goes into it to ensure that we're going to have reliable, good performing ammunition in the reduced recoil as well as the standard loads.
And I'm really quite excited about that one because it's like customer first thinking. You know, what a way to get a mom or a dad, especially like in the context of youth shooters. A lot of the rifles that are out on the market nowadays, and I'll pick on one because it's really popular and quite good, is the Ruger Americans.
Oh, yeah.
With modular stocks. Savage also has an offering with modular stocks where we can increase length of pull, increase comb height if need be. So you have a youngster that's small in stature at the age of 10 to 12, 14 years old. It's likely that child is going to grow, right? And now you have a terminal performance package that doesn't beat the tar out of them and doesn't shake their confidence.
Yep.
Gives them a reason to be excited to shoot. We're doubling down on potential success in the field when we do connect with an animal because we've got a bullet that's going to do it. And as they grow and they can handle more recoil and they can handle more rifle, it's a simple switch over to them.
And just experience level and exceeding their effective range. That's all going to step.
And that's the way you make a dollar stretch, I suppose, when we're trying to think about this. You're making very little concession.
Yep.
You're not saying that little Jill or little Jim can't do something, aside from distance, right? So function's going to be predicated on velocity on target. But to your point, like I'm certainly not going to take a youngster and say like, well, that pronghorn's 414. Good luck, right? Like that's not going to happen. That's not how things necessarily should be done. And what a cool thing! I'm super excited to see that come.
We were pretty excited about it after we started kicking it around and started talking about it. I mean, we thought about it. We have kids that are that age. We have sons and daughters that are 12, 13, 14 but they're inheriting granddad's gun.
Yeah.
And he had a 30-06 forever. He had the M1 he brought back from the war. Things like that. They can't shoot the same load that dad does. But what's cool though is Gregg's out shooting a 30-06 and his son's shooting a 30-06. We put different tip colors on the bullets. So the lighter load has got the light tip blue. And so if dad or mom's carrying it in their pockets, they can pull them out and say, these are yours, son, or this is yours, daughter, things
really
like
smart.
that. So it's just easy to differentiate in the field because you never know. The field gets exciting.
Yeah, we don't want people to get mixed up and think they're the same product. And they are different bullet weights other than the 243.
Yep.
Where we step down in weight as well. But the 243 is still an 80 grain, but it's a different 80 grain.
Yeah.
And for now, that's loaded ammo only, not
loaded
component.
ammo only.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so that bullet is only in the ammo. Yeah,
Understood.
not to be confused with any of the box component products that are in those same calibers and weights.
Sure.
Gotcha. I mean, that's excellent for that application, but I don't know. Gregg's 300 blackout loading sounds pretty sweet for that as well.
True.
It does. It turns the cartridge into a different cartridge. That bullet turns the cartridge into a different cartridge.
Yeah,
and its capability.
It can do things it shouldn't, you know. I mean, it's not a 30-30.
No.
But You've talked, it's as close to a modern, you talk about the AR platform. I'm shooting more and more suppressed, hunting more and more suppressed.
Yep.
I can go SBR suppressed and go out there and have confidence that she'll shoot 100, 200, 300 yards with something like that on hogs, deer, or whatever. Makes it pretty impressive.
It's pretty incredible.
On the other, I'll go back to the 280 Ackley. Like Mike said, I'm a big 280 Ackley shooter. I bought one years and years ago, built one. I've had 3 or 4 before it was standardized. When it was still Wildcat, I was still forming brass and all that, but I wanted to be able to do ammo for it forever. I shoot the 139 LRX in mine. I've shot the 145. Mine's a 1 in 8.44. It's on a proof barrel, Manor stock. So I've even shot the 168 LRX. But when we look to do ammo, there's things we build to SAMI specifications for our commercial ammo to ensure it's going to work in everyone's rifles, right? So twist rate has to be factored in. We can go heavier than we can with the 7 mag because it's 1 to 9 1/4, because 280 Ackley standard is 1 to 9. So we can't go throw a 168 or a 160 or something, but we wanted to do something different specific to that. Even though the 139 and the 145 is a good choice and it works, I've hand loaded them for years. We ended up with a 152 grain that's built specific for that cartridge. BC, velocity, it's all been optimized. Function window has been optimized. And I'll bring this up. We kind of mentioned earlier, but I was actually lucky enough last year at this show, the Western Hunt Expo.
It was rigged.
Yeah, it was rigged. I hear it now. It's like,
we specifically said we wouldn't say.
Those dang influencers.
Yeah.
No, nobody knows me. I'm nobody. If I can draw, I've been coming here for 17 years, putting in first tag I've ever drawn here. But I was actually lucky enough to draw the Buck Cliff South mule deer tag. It was right when we were finishing up development. Like literally,
Weeks.
I think we might have had the first prototype bullets off the press maybe 2 weeks before my hunt. But I knew that's what I wanted to carry. So got the bullets off, hand loaded them, took them out last fall. That's what I used on my mule deer on the Expo tag hunt last year. So worked awesome. Ended up shooting it. And actually, give you guys credit, I acquired one of the Fury AB range finding binos. I've loved the idea of having it just cleaned up all in one unit. That's what I used. Ranged it was 485 yards. Able to make a good shot. And the bullet worked awesome. So
that's super. I'm glad you mentioned all of that, particularly the rigged Expo tag. I'm still waiting on mine. Of course. Now, maybe I'll draw and then accuse me all you want. I just want the darn thing.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't matter.
I'll take the heat. But I remember hearing that you guys did some special stuff in the development of that cartridge specifically to optimize it, and I think that's super cool. So.
I'll have to pick up a couple boxes of those because I've got a 280 AI that I had built by the Remington Custom Shop.
Oh, yeah.
And it's an absolute hammer of a rifle. And, the 145 I've looked at is about the perfect bullet available for it, and it's been great. But an optimized projectile in that weight class is just going to be perfect. And you mentioned the 168s too. Like, I'm twisted to handle a 168, but I look at that as a probable diminishing return. Like looking at what I want out of the cartridge and what it's capable of. If I had more case volume, I'd certainly drive it, but I don't, and that was the intent of the cartridge. I didn't want that case volume. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah, and it's true. Like the 168 28 nozzler. I put together a 28 nozzler for my brother. Great choice for it. 168 RX.
That's exactly what it's for.
The 280 AI, I've shot it. My brother used it to kill a bull elk years ago, and it works. But the 145, we've killed a ton of deer in my family. It was kind of the go-to rifle for a while. It's just a better option. Velocity on your side, better expansion at range. Sure, the 168 has a higher BC, but the trade-off's not there.
Correct.
You can get so hung up on BC, and it matters. Don't get me wrong. But it's that trade-off. Velocity, BC. You got to have that perfect balance.
And that's a lesson that you folks taught me, because when I started, I guess, into long-range shooting, which wasn't all that long ago, and I was so hung on it. And it wasn't the thing that mattered to me for what I was doing. If I was a long range shooter, if I shot PRS competitions or if I shot ELR competitions, it's a whole different discussion. But as a hunter, I stepped away from BC as being the precedence or the need for me to be successful, and really leaned into matching that bullet weight, having the bullet construction. That's like it goes without saying because it's what I'm shooting, but having the bullet construction, finding that optimal velocity range to function at, and sticking with it. And that 145 and the 280 AI was fantastic. So I'm excited for that. I
feel like
cool.
the 280 AI, anybody that's shooting a 280 AI, like, it's just like a sophisticated gentleman's cartridge. You're like, whenever somebody's like, that's their go-to, I'm like, okay, Okay, I want to get one just so people will perceive me that way.
It's a cool
Ryan.
round.
Yeah.
My problem with it has been it's a custom gun. So, yes, it's a SAMI cartridge. The chamber is laid out a little bit different than I really actually wanted. And so I've got to monkey with it a little bit more than I think normally would if I was to go buy a Weatherby Mark V and 280 AI, or if I was going to go buy a Bergara or whoever else is chambering one up right now. And that's fine. I can deal with it. It really isn't that novel though. Once you if you get a stock rifle, it's just a regular chambering. Damn Intelligent one too. I'll say.
Yeah,
so
it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Guys, did we miss anything of any of the cool stuff that you guys are going on, or bullet design, or functionality, or?
I think we hit everything. I say we've definitely got the R&D guys in the ballistics lab working through a lot of things, and we have some technology that we're working through that you may see some new things from Barnes coming in the next year or two.
Good,
awesome.
Always just keeping innovating and trying to go that route. So
yeah,
I love it. Well, I shot a blacktail early on in my hunting career with the original Barnes X out of my Browning BAR 30-06.
There you go,
Ryan.
Spray them.
You know it, baby. Yeah, that was at a time in my life, Ryan, where I was placing a precedence on volume versus at least precision in regards to my personal shooting prowess. But I'm super excited. Like I said, we've got those 175 LRXs, and excited to get with Ryan and load those in the old Wisdom and see what we can do and hopefully take down.
And let me know if you need anything, questions. You start loading your Wisdom. We'd be happy to help you out there.
Awesome. I love it, guys. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us here.
No doubt.
Super fun. And hopefully everybody out there, hopefully you liked this one as much as we did. If you couldn't tell, Ryan is a fan of Barnes bullets, like we opened up. I think you may have hammered that home, Ryan. Yeah. But thank you guys again. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
See ya.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.